Hey, Nicholas with the Backyard TARDIS here with another audiobook review. This time technically I'm reviewing three books, but they act kind of like one, and that's the Corellian Trilogy. After I went back and did the Thrawn Trilogy, I was trying to think back of specific EU books that I love, because at this point it all kind of blends together. It's been so long. I hadn't, until I went back and reread those books, I hadn't reread an EU book since leaving the theater on episode 3, and that's a whole other story. But anyways, suffice to say, I remember as a kid really loving these books. And I also loved, for the same reason, a lot of the Jedi Academy books. And these were the books that were, at the time, garnered towards my, these were the tween books, the young adult books that are designed for your 10 to 15-year-old. They're not, as, later, and they're almost to an extent a little fan fiction-y. They very much, like, if Bad Batch is like a more kiddie version of Clone Wars, this is interesting sci-fi, interesting Star Wars ideas and concepts, if a little bit more comical, a little bit more kidified. And but my main reason was I really liked the solo kids. Janice and Jaina, or Jason and Jaina and Anakin, especially Anakin. Anakin was my favorite. And going back at this, we talk about how much Disney mines from the EU, but when I think of how Anakin is described, and this is Anakin Solo, this is Leia and Han Solo's third kid, and he's named after his grandfather, Anakin Skywalker. And he has this unique ability to almost have the Force ability to work with droids. And it's very odd. And Luke has a hard time getting around it, because droids, being an inanimate object, don't work the same with the Force. Like, they can use the Force to move them around and find them, but he almost can relate to droids the way that people with the Force can feel emotions or be suggestive over the mind or something. He's almost like that way, like he's a prodigy with droids because of Force powers. And that was kind of something that was unique. Like, Luke couldn't even see that in the archives. And that was like a big part of his thing, is he was always this like kid who was building droids, but he was also super young. Like, he's depicted, I don't know if they give an age in here, but he kind of feels like a 5 or 6-year-old. And I look back, and you look back at maybe 6, 7, but Jason and Jaina, they definitely feel like maybe they're like 12 years old, or they're at least 10. And I get so much. I remember where Anakin goes in some of those Jedi Academy books, and he very much feels like how Anakin in episode 1 is characterized. It's almost like George Lucas tried to recapture that. And a lot of people are like, oh, George Lucas never read any of the EU. He did. He cherry-picked certain things that he wanted in Clone Wars. He's like, oh, we're going to bring this in. We're going to do this, or this video. Like, he would do some stuff, and there's interviews and stuff, and he brings up stuff that are stuff from the EU. He's aware of it. Do I think he sat down and read every EU book and gave it his golden George Lucas stamp of approval? No, I don't. But I do think he, in general, read the synopsis of the books, kind of got the idea of what was being pitched to him, and occasionally vetoed stuff. Now, some of that is dependent on how he licensed it out. There are certain books that George is directly involved in, like, through the publishing. But there's other times when, like, they, like, license out to Pelican or one of these companies, and they make, like, a children's little, like, Luke's bedtime stories or something. Like, a lot of that stuff doesn't have to go through the same approval. It's basically, you know, we want to learn your ABCs with Star Wars book, and we've got the license, and they just do it. There's not, I think with some stuff it's not, but there's other things that even if George wasn't doing himself, there was a little bit of approval process, and it was rough at first. Like when the EU first started, they had the comics and the books were going two different directions, and that had to be reconciled together, and it didn't fit perfectly, but they made it fit. And then there was a concentrated effort, despite the fact that there were tons of people writing these novels, and but they started making, okay, where's the time period? If this character died, like that had to, like, okay, that character's off the table, and everybody was given slots, so people weren't writing, like the comic and the first Thrawn trilogy weren't writing the same period of time. And that there was an effort that was put out there. Was it perfect? No. And there were so many people working on it, so much, like the EU goes way out of control. I fully understood why Disney wanted to retcon it as a whole. I just wish we would have had books from that go, okay, we're going to cherry pick this book out, and you know what, they could have even modified the books a little bit, like, hey, this is what our new canon's going to be, you need to change some names, or, you know, you need to change a little bit of events, some timing, and then we're going to republish this as a canon book. I think that would have been amazing. If they could have taken the cream of the crop of the EU and made that canon and build off that with the movies and work with, you know, a few of the people who used to be writers. Not everybody would have been willing to do that, but if they'd taken those few, done that, I think it would have been good. So the Corellian Trilogy, 3 books. You have Ambush at Corellia, Assault on Salonia, and Showdown at Centerpoint, probably the most action-packed one. And then this is written by Roger McBride Allen and narrated by Anthony Heald. Now, like I said, it's a little bit childish, but I think Roger Allen here, he really does show that he's got some sci-fi chops, because there's some big ideas in here. It also seems a little sloppy with the canon of the OT trilogy. Looking at this as an adult, being more critical, a lot of this I took at face value as a kid, wasn't super analyzing it against the movies. And then narrated Anthony Heald. I gotta say, well, he does an okay job. He is not my favorite book narrator, and he kept talking about how, especially in the first book, but anytime like they reference back to it, and you know, Leia's like, oh, here on Coruscant, back on Coruscant. Where's Coruscant? The Senate is kind of like, the New Republic's based on Coruscant? What's Coruscant? It's Coruscant. And it's just funny, like at this era, I don't know if that had officially been said in technically I don't think it'd been in a movie. So, you know, this is all expanded universe material, which, you know, later comes out in that, but so I guess they really can't correct somebody because it's never been officially pronounced in a movie, so it's like it's whatever the reader feels the word should be pronounced. But you know, after having the prequels and Coruscant being like so pivotal at like all the Clone Wars episodes, it's like this is drilled in, this is how you say it, and hearing this be wrong just stuck out like a sore thumb. His characters, he does a good job, but he's not, he doesn't differentiate his voice a whole lot. So what's the whole plot? The whole plot is that something is going on in the Corellian area. That's where Han Solo is from. That's where the Millennium Falcon is from. They're the famous shipbuilders, but we're going to get to learn a little bit more of where Han Solo comes from. And this is different from the Solo trilogy, because there's a Solo trilogy and there's Lando books, and those kind of go into like his childhood and stuff. But the Corellian trilogy, well, it sets up some of that lore. It's more focused just on like what the planet system is like and the political atmosphere and some of the values that Han Solo has. That was kind of interesting. So on here, you've got 5 planets. And so you've got 3 different main species living on these 5 planets. And each species has one planet that is kind of considered their planet of origin. But the way all these planets are and the way they operate in the solar system, there's a theory that it's not natural. The way these planets are placed and all that, they is like this big conspiracy theory that, some imposing alien race at some point in time put these planets here in these orbits. And so the 3 races here, we have the Dahl, the Solonians, and the Terrans, which is, humans. And what's happening is communication with this area has kind of been relaxed. The New Republic has no teeth. They have demilitarized at this point. So they finally, have beaten back all of these uprisings of the last of the Empire, and they immediately get rid of the military. Which is something that the sequel trilogy does too. And I was kind of critical of that, and to realize they did that here. This constant idea that like they just scuttled all the X-Wings. They got rid of them. And they don't have squadrons of X-Wings and all the fighters, and Wedge is doing running evacuation shuttles, but they have this situation where star systems aren't necessarily falling in line, and some of them are wanting to step away, and they're looking at the Republic's going to fall apart. And Corellia is a very important system, and they're kind of doing it. Oh, you know what? But they're kind of going on this thing where they're that. So Akbar and Leia and Mon Mothma, these characters, well, actually, I don't think they mentioned Mon Mothma, but they've been sending in spies, diplomats, different ones into here, and they're not hearing anything back. So they're like, well, why don't the Solos go have a family vacation there to go have Han back at his roots? Because that's where you want to take your kids, is where there's a super dangerous thing happening on an undercover mission. It was really kind of a weird situation, but that's kind of the setup for this book. With that, we're now going to go into the spoiler section. So yeah, spoilers.
Spoilers.
Okay, so like I said, spoilers, final warning, click off if you plan on reading these books. I don't necessarily just know what you're getting into. This is not going to be a deep thing. There's a lot of fun here, but it's definitely, I wouldn't say it would be peak performance of the EU. It definitely would not put it up there with the Thrawn trilogy. However, Extra Techie mentioned that he felt like it didn't really push. The characters at the end of that hadn't really progressed much past where we left them off in Return of the Jedi. And I'm like, well, it's only a couple years later. It's not really supposed to. So this is quite a bit later. The twins, Leia was pregnant with the twins there. Here, they're, like I said, they're probably 10 or 12 years old. This is some significant time, and they've yet had another kid since then. But basically they get there, and Han's like, you know what? Stuff is kind of shady here, and I'm gonna I'm gonna not land where I'm supposed to. I'm gonna pull back, and immediately he gets bombarded by raiders, and then a military bravada comes out and saves him. And Han's like, all those ships, those were drones. Those were run by um, stuff that wasn't real. That was just a display for our benefit. And so he gets in the back, and they find that the Terrans are forming anti-alien militia. They're walking around like Nazi youth groups and just doing that. And he's kind of shocked, but then he finds out, well, what's the political thing? Well, that's going on with the Salonians, and that's going on with the Dahl too, and they're all kind of, you know, uh, radicalizing, and all these radical groups, and they're all bent on kicking each other off the planets. And Solo's kind of like everybody's always, we have unique different, but we've always kind of got along. And come to find out, like, they hint at that there is a bigger bad. There is a bigger bad who is influencing them, who has stirred up these groups, and they are using the center point station to blow up stars. And all these groups are really looking for these gravity well devices on the planets. And when you find out, so this center point station is bigger than the Death Star. Right there, you go back to the line like that's too big to be a space station. Han Solo says that. You're saying in the star system he's from, where he grew up, there's a space station bigger than the Death Star. This is a really interesting sci-fi concept. It's not very great with continuity here, because, and I didn't mess with this as a kid, like, it didn't bother me at all, but as an adult, the moment I heard that it's a station much more massive than the Death Star, and I thought, like, how would Han Solo be like totally against the idea of space stations that big? But this is kind of a unique thing. This space station is so big, but it's like so ancient. It's before artificial gravity and stuff, so it actually is spinning. It's like a world where you're on all the outer layer, and then it has a big thing to a core, and in the core it has some kind of like nuclear type reactor that acts like a sun in the core, and it actually produces heat and gravity towards the outside. And then that core generates its power from the fact that there are two planets flying around this space station. So two Earth-like planets are orbiting this space station that's at the center. Not that it's bigger than the planets, but it's massive. It's bigger than the first Death Star. Which means, because the second Death Star is a little bigger, and it's not bigger than the second Death Star, so they make that distinction. So it's somewhere in between. But it's got these planets, and the gravity of that builds up this power source at the center. And what nobody knew is this is actually can be used as an ancient weapon. But it's not meant to be a weapon. It was meant to pull the planets around. And each planet has a gravity well thing on itself that interacted with that. And that is how this space station built this solar system. However, they could use it to shoot out and affect the gravity inside a sun. So basically pull some of a sun's core out, and that would destabilize a sun and make it go supernova. And they did this. And Thraken Solo, yeah, that's right, Han Solo has, I believe he was his cousin or his uncle, I'm trying to remember, but Thraken, head of the Terran militia, he knows about this, and he tries to take credit for it, but he's just a pawn. We never get to, in the whole series, we don't get to know who's in charge of it all. But he's a pawn, and he takes credit for the supernova, and he says, hey, on this date, this one's going to happen, on this date, that one's going to happen. And the Republic have no idea that it's related. But he's taking credit for it and backing up, and he's like, okay, you're going to get all the Dahl and Solonians off of my planet. Off of the whole system. It's ours now. Their planets, they need to leave. They need to be, the Republic needs to move them somewhere else. Because all these planets are ours now. And if you don't, we're going to just start wiping out solar system after solar system. The truth of the matter is with the planet's gravity well machines, they could prevent the Centerpoint station from actually shooting out this deadly thing into a star. So they're designed to work in tandem with each other, and shooting a blast from that could deflect the gravity pull blast. So everybody is all in this mad dash to control these things. With that in line, we then see the family get split up. There's an attack on the capital as Thraken's taking control of what is the legitimate government set up by the New Republic. And they all kind of get separated. Now, Mara Jade shows up. She's been given a message to give to Luke, but Luke's not there. She thought it would be, and so she's come. And the message is Thraken's message, and now they're like, is she working with Thraken? Is she not? But once again, they have the team up of her and Leia, much like the Thrawn trilogy. There's a lot of trying to recapture the Thrawn trilogy in here, but so her and Leia go, and they escape. But Han has to go and do something, and Han has told Chewie to stay with the kids. In fact, Chewie's upset. He's like, you need to take care of this. And Chewie's like, hey, I got the life debt. Are you questioning that I'm not going to fulfill the life debt? Is like his attitude. And Han's like, no, you don't understand me. If it comes to me or Leia or the kids, I don't want you to hesitate. I don't want you to take a thought. I don't want you to trade away well, the kids are in less danger. That you protect my kids. You forget about me and Leia. You protect the kids. And Chewie's not exactly happy about that at first, but then he's like, okay, he's like, okay, you're gonna run into danger, and I'm not gonna be your co-pilot. I'm not gonna be by your side. I'm gonna go off with these kids and take them to a world where we think they're more safe. Now we start meeting in. So we've got Thraken. He's kind of our main Terran character, and Solo was kidnapped for a little bit, and they realized he looked like Thraken, and that's why he wasn't killed. And he gets loose, and then he gets kidnapped again. In the next book, kind of repetitive. But so while he's kidnapped, he meets the Solonian Dramask. Now all of a sudden I can't remember how to say it. After I complained that he doesn't say names right. Dramascus, something like that. And here's one of the things. The Solonians, when I was a kid, I envisioned something that was a mix halfway between reptile and insect. Come to find out, they are more like mole people. They have a hierarchy like ants. Like they have queens, and there's reproducing females and non-reproducing females and males, but only non-reproducing females ever go out into public and interact with the other races. The rest of them all live underground. They've got claws and this and teeth, and the way they describe their claws and their teeth, they sound very reptilian. I looked up the pictures of this and some of the things they meant. They are basically mole people. And they look very silly and goofy in the artist renditions that I never knew about as a kid. Really changed me. But yeah, they're very much but they don't understand the concept of lying. They don't understand the concept of human families. They're all family, they're clans. The way they win wars, it's like once one proves that they're superior, like the other side just agrees and pledges allegiance to the other side. Like that's how they war with each other. They're not very good at space travel because they're less. It's not that they're less scientifically advanced, but they are kind of like a species that probably wouldn't have gone out into space had other aliens not come to their planet and showed them the technology that has not really been their desire, and they're a little space phobic. And it's comical as Han is trying to be on one of the ships that they built, and he's dealing where the commander has no experience in flying, and he's got a pilot that will not disobey the commander, and he's trying to give the pilot directions because they're not letting him fly, and the pilot, but then like something will happen and the commander will give like the wrong advice because they're panicking, and like they will never disobey the commander, and Han's just like, this is maddening, and he's constantly having to go fix the engine because the engine's blown up, and there's like a scene where they're being pursued, and he's like, their weapon system is non-existent, and he's like, the best I could do is I could basically open up the hatch and shoot with my blaster. It's like, he's like, that's like my options. And so interesting things, but they do show like he comes up with an idea. Like he's sitting there, and as he's fixing and tinkering, he's like taking little scraps of metal, any spare parts, and he's taking it all and he's like putting it in the back hatch of the thing. And he has a moment when like they have no weapons, they're about to get it, and he basically tells the pilot to put it into a barrel roll and blow the back hatch, and all the stuff like just goes spiraling out and takes out the ship behind him, all the debris. So interesting things like that. Lots of plot there. Lots of cool stuff between Han Solo and Thraken, bringing out the fact of like what are the values of a Corellian. Like a family is first, honor, this, that, and Thraken's like, this, that, never involve kids, never do, like, and it shows that, well, he's a smuggler and he's this and stuff like that. Han Solo does have a code. He does have certain things, like he doesn't pass this. Like he has no problem shooting Greedo, but he'd never shoot a kid. He'd never shoot a kid. And you never go after somebody's family. And it was really interesting, like establishing that Han Solo does have principles. He wasn't a completely lawless man. He has, and it's kind of like, I would liken it to somebody who grows up in a very religious household and carries those values with them, but they themselves aren't religious. But there's certain things like, you don't lie, you don't, you just know that like you were taught as a kid, like this is, you don't do this. And that is a value and something that was instilled in you. Even though maybe it's not to the full extent, you push the line because you're not, it very much made Han Solo that kind of character. I like that. I like that development. I like Thraken being just like evil, and Solo being like, how could you be spitting on all the values of our people? You went after my kids. Like, just that. And this impresses Raskus, the Solonian. She's like, he's your blood, your kin, and he does this to you, and she can't fathom it. And she refers to him as Honorable Solo and dishonorable Solo to Thraken. And he's like, but you are most honorable Solo. Help me understand. We don't understand lying. Help us And so it's interesting. Now you have the doll. So the kids originally were supposed to have like this guide tutor thing, which was a doll named Ibrahim, who is not racist, even though in his people they're having that problem too. And he has a droid called QX-X2, or Q9, X2. And Q9 is interesting. He is an astromech, but he has been given the ability to fly by little booster things that come out, just like R2 gets in the prequels. He has that in this EU book. So he's an R2 type unit, but he's been added that, and this droid has been modifying himself and has given himself a regular speech processor. And he is sassy like R2, and oh, all of a sudden my mind's going from Rebels. I feel really bad because he's one of my favorite characters, but it'll come to me as soon as I'm done recording. But anyways, he has like that attitude and that. But it's interesting. Like they're dealing with the Solo kids, and they actually find the thing on Dahl, the big like repulsor thing, and that Anakin, his like abilities goes in there, and so when the whole thing comes to close, it is Anakin's abilities, like all these professional techs and stuff like that. They can't make the machine. Anakin's like, do this, and they're like, are we sure they're listening to this kid? So it is very much the little kid is like the whiz that's saving the world in this book. All of that's kind of interesting. I like the Q9 character. I really, though, like the development of the Solo kids in this book, especially Anakin. That's interesting. Like I said, Han and Thraken's things. Marjade and Leia continue to have good, be active, do that. But their story wasn't that big. Now, the one part of the story that I have not been talking about is Lando and Luke. So why doesn't Luke go with them on this mission? Well, because Luke has to go be Lando's wingman. Yeah, this is my least liked part of the book. See, Lando has decided that if he wants to go back to being a legitimate businessman, like he was on Cloud City, he's got a money problem. See, he keeps helping out the New Republic, and like evil bad guys, whether it be the Emperor, Thrawn, Vader, whatever, like they keep constantly destroying all of his investments. And he's a good businessman. And he doesn't want to go back to being an illegitimate businessman to get his money back up to create a legitimate business. So he's decided, I gotta get hitched. I gotta be, I gotta find some, rich old lady and marry her. And I need Luke to be my wingman. Because, the respect for the Jedi or what it, like, I don't know. He's like, I need you to come along and be my wingman. And so they go that, and then they have a woman who's kind of like a succubus or whatever. She's like kind of shocked at first that Lando's young, but basically she extends out your life for 5 years. And it will care for you every bit of need, anything you want, money, whatever. She will provide it to you. But at the end of the 5 years, you will die a peaceful, calm, and painless death. Kind of a weird thing. So that's what they're doing. But Luke, stops Lando right before the I do and says, I just figured it, or actually, no, it was, he had a bad feeling about it, but then, C-3PO did some research about her, found out, and, he came running in, and she'd had, 50 husbands. You would be 51 after 5 years that I would have survived. So, on top of all this, while the Solo and all of them are there, Thraken throws up a warp, not warp, but something that prevents faster in life. But not just like my tongue's not working, an indictorship, but for the whole sector. And so nobody can get from the Republic can get in there, but there's this one place that has an army on this one planet that's kind of on the edge of being with and apparently it's one of Luke's old girlfriends is the former queen there or whatever, and so Luke has to go in there and make this request, and she has a son. And the son makes Luke promise that he's going to bring her back. And Luke does. Spoilers. She doesn't survive. She dies heroically. I'd be interested in the books to see where that goes. And her husband had recently been assassinated or died or something. So now this kid's an orphan. And it's Luke's responsibility. And so that's kind of an interesting thing. But they get there, and now someone who is a suitor for Lando is there, proving to be a source, and it's just kind of some of it's sloppy, some of it's that, but the whole thing with Lando and that, it was just a bad storyline to an otherwise fairly good book. And so if I had two critiques, the whole Lando plot is awful. It's just awful. And it reeks of tween CW drama. Like, we gotta put some teenage romance in here so that the teenagers can be like, ooh, saucy. Lando's getting it on, trying to find a wife. Oh, I don't know. As an adult, it's not amusing. Him going and swooning rich hag after it. Like, I don't know why that was considered. It just, And then the whole, like, Centerpoint Station is a really cool idea, and I do think it should be in Star Wars. I don't think it should be in the Corellian sector where Han Solo grew up. It just, for him, that, like, in disbelief that that there can't be a space station as big as, that would be like living in Toronto, where the CN Tower, the largest, tallest building in the world, man-made structure in the world, exists. If you took the Twin Towers and stacked them on top of each other, it's still taller than that. It's significantly taller than the Space Needle. Seeing that, traveling to Seattle and looking at a building like the Space Needle and going, I don't believe a building can be that tall. That's too big to be a building. It's an illusion. If in your own backyard you had a building that was bigger and more impressive than that sticks. So those two things irk me. There was a little kid, but this is made for kids. It's that. So the Solo Kids, yes, some of it's a little comical, a little kiddie, but I enjoyed it. It's fun. The whole story, the plot, everything going on is fun, and it's setting up stuff that's going to get answered in other books. And I remember that all being good and paying off and stuff like that. So, all in all, it's a fun little trilogy. They're short. The three equal like a bigger, like one of the Thrawn books, that size. The three of them together is still shorter than one of those books. So they're very short, quick reads. These are meant to be read by a 10-year-old in a day or two. So that's what they're designed to be. Like, kids in school to read this during reading hour at school. For that, they're good. They're fine. They're this. But this is not, because that's when I read it, I had a very fond memory of that. I have to say that memory's tainted. But all in all, very good. Would I recommend this? It would not be, if you have younger kids, this is definitely a good read for them. And I think if you're just wanting something that's lighthearted, fun, and short, it can be a fun read. But would I say this is an example of why the EU is better than what we got with Star Wars now? No. I would not. This is not one that I would go, oh, this is an EU book you need to go out and read. But it's not an EU book that is a bad read. So it's just kind of middle of the road there. With that, did you read this trilogy ever? What did you think? And is there a specific EU book that you want me to listen to and react to? It's got to be an audiobook available, because I honestly don't have time to read. I have books that I want to read that are not getting read because of my lack of time. But with that, I'll catch you in the next video.